The bitter Montana wind howled through the jagged pines as Penelope Edwards clutched her crying infant to her chest, the wagon wheel lying broken beside her like a shattered promise. It was 1878, and the western frontier had proven as harsh and unforgiving as the rumors that had reached her back east. She had been traveling for 3 days since fleeing her uncle's homestead, after his drunken rage had made it clear that she and her 4-month-old daughter Charlotte were no longer welcome. Now, stranded with dwindling supplies and a baby whose cries echoed across the valley in the pre-dawn glow, Penelope felt despair creeping into her bones along with the cold. "Hush now, sweet one," she whispered, bouncing Charlotte gently. "Mama's here." But her soothing words did nothing to calm the hungry, exhausted child. The sound of approaching hoofbeats made Penelope stiffen. She reached for the small revolver tucked in her skirts, the only thing of value her late husband had left her besides his name and their child. A lone rider appeared through the morning mist, his broad-shouldered silhouette unmistakably that of a seasoned horseman. As he drew closer, Penelope could make out a weather-worn face beneath a wide-brimmed hat. He reined his horse to a stop several yards away, respectfully keeping his distance. "Madam," he called, his voice deep but gentle, "appears you might be in a spot of trouble." "We're fine," Penelope replied, trying to quiet Charlotte's wails. The stranger dismounted with fluid grace, his movements suggesting a man who'd spent most of his life in the saddle. "Name's Wyatt Stone," he said, removing his hat to reveal sandy brown hair and eyes the color of a summer sky. "Don't mean to intrude, but that wheel won't fix itself, and these parts ain't friendly after dark." Charlotte's crying intensified, her tiny face reddening with the effort. "Your little one's got quite a set of lungs," Wyatt remarked, his expression softening. "When's the last time you rested, madam?" Penelope hesitated. She couldn't remember. "I'm fine," she insisted, though the dark circles under her eyes betrayed her exhaustion. Wyatt approached slowly, hands visible. "I've got a camp set up just over that ridge. Wood's already burning. You'll be safe there while I take a look at your wagon." "I don't know you, Mr. Stone." "No, madam, you don't." He looked at the crying baby, then back at Penelope. "But your baby needs warmth, and you look about ready to collapse. I can help if you'll let me." Dawn was breaking fully now, painting the sky in watercolor hues of pink and gold. Charlotte's cries had become weaker, which worried Penelope more than the loud wails. Wyatt seemed to read her thoughts. "Her baby was crying at dawn," he said softly, as if to himself. Then to Penelope, "You'll rest. I'll take the morning watch. You have my word." Something in his steady gaze and unwavering honesty made Penelope nod. "We don't have much choice," she admitted. "Everyone has choices, madam. Just some are harder than others." Wyatt's camp was modest but well organized, with a small fire crackling cheerfully in a stone ring. A coffee pot hung over the flames, the rich aroma mingling with the scent of pine. His bedroll was neatly laid out, and a saddle served as his pillow. "Take my bedroll," Wyatt offered, already moving to prepare a bottle for the baby using condensed milk from his supplies. Penelope watched in amazement as his large, calloused hands worked with unexpected tenderness. "You've done this before," she observed. A shadow passed over his face. "Had a younger sister once. Helped Ma raise her after Pa died." Penelope accepted the makeshift bottle, and Charlotte latched onto it eagerly. "Thank you," she whispered, sinking down onto the bedroll, her body finally surrendering to exhaustion. "Rest now," Wyatt said, already moving toward his horse. "I'll see to your wagon and keep watch." As sleep claimed her, Penelope's last thought was that she hadn't felt this safe since before her husband died. When she awoke, the sun was high in the sky. Charlotte was sleeping peacefully beside her, and the smell of something cooking made Penelope's stomach growl. She sat up to find Wyatt tending a small pot over the fire. "Beans and bacon," he explained. "Not fancy, but it'll fill the hollow." "How long did I sleep?" "Few hours. Your little one woke once, but I managed." He nodded toward Charlotte. "She's a fighter, that one. Like her mama, I expect." Penelope flushed. "I'm no fighter, Mr. Stone, just a widow trying to survive." "That's the definition of fighting where I come from," Wyatt replied, handing her a tin plate. "And it's just Wyatt, if you don't mind." As they ate, Penelope explained her situation. Her husband, Thomas Edwards, had died of typhoid fever just before Charlotte was born. With nowhere to go, she traveled west to her uncle's homestead near Helena. But her uncle's drinking had worsened, and when he'd raised a hand to her, she'd fled with Charlotte and what little she could pack in the old wagon. "I'm heading to Silver Creek," she said. "I have a letter from a woman there who needs help with her boarding house, room and board for work." Wyatt nodded thoughtfully. "I know Silver Creek. It's 2 days' ride from here if the weather holds." He hesitated. "Your wagon wheel is split clean through. I've patched it best I could, but it won't last the journey." Penelope's heart sank. "What can I do?" "My ranch is half a day's ride from here. I've got spare wheels there. I could take you, fix your wagon proper, and then escort you to Silver Creek." "Your ranch? I thought you were just—" Penelope trailed off, unsure how to finish. Wyatt smiled slightly. "Just a drifter, no, madam. Got a small spread about 10 miles north. Was out tracking some strays when I found you." He gestured to the brand on his horse's flank. "Circle S Ranch, it's not much, but it's mine." Penelope studied him. This man who'd appeared like a guardian angel had a home, a life. "Why would you help us?" Wyatt's gaze drifted to Charlotte. "Because it's the right thing to do." He stood, brushing crumbs from his denims. "We should move out soon if we want to reach the ranch before dark." They packed up camp efficiently, Wyatt helping Penelope secure Charlotte in a sling across her chest before lifting her onto the wagon bench. He tied his horse to the back of the wagon and took the reins. "Ready?" he asked. Penelope nodded, holding Charlotte close as the wagon lurched forward. She had put her trust in this stranger, this cowboy with kind eyes and gentle hands, and for the first time since Thomas died, she felt the faintest flicker of hope. The journey to Wyatt's ranch passed in comfortable silence, broken occasionally by Charlotte's coos or Wyatt pointing out landmarks. As the sun began its descent, they crested a hill, revealing a modest but well-maintained ranch nestled in a green valley below. "Circle S," Wyatt announced, a note of pride in his voice. The main house was a sturdy log structure with a covered porch. A barn and several outbuildings completed the homestead, along with corrals holding a small herd of cattle and a few horses. Smoke curled from the chimney, suggesting someone was home. "My foreman and his wife live in the cabin yonder," Wyatt explained, noting Penelope's questioning look. "Joe and Martha Hawkins, good folks." As they pulled up to the house, a stocky man with silver-streaked black hair emerged from the barn. "Boss, wasn't expecting you back so soon," he called, then stopped short at the sight of Penelope and Charlotte. "Well now, what have we here?" "Joe, this is Mrs. Penelope Edwards and her daughter Charlotte. Their wagon broke down and they need a place to stay until I can fix it." Joe touched the brim of his hat respectfully. "Madam, miss." He glanced at Wyatt with undisguised curiosity but asked no questions. "Martha's just pulled a venison roast from the oven. Plenty to go around." "Thank you," Penelope said, suddenly aware of how bedraggled she must appear after days on the trail. A plump woman with a kind face appeared on the porch of the nearby cabin. "Joseph Hawkins, are you keeping our guests standing out in the dirt?" she called, already making her way toward them. Come in, come in. The baby must be exhausted, poor lamb." Martha Hawkins proved to be a whirlwind of efficient hospitality. Within an hour, Penelope found herself bathed, dressed in a borrowed nightgown, and seated at a table laden with the promised venison, potatoes, and fresh baked bread. Charlotte, clean and fed, slept peacefully in a makeshift cradle fashioned from a drawer lined with soft blankets. "You're the first woman Wyatt's brought home," Martha remarked as she poured coffee after the meal. Her tone was conversational, but her eyes sparkled with unasked questions. "It's not like that," Penelope hastened to explain. "Mr. Stone Wyatt, he found us stranded. He's just helping us get to Silver Creek." Joe snorted softly. "Wyatt's always been a soft touch for strays," he said, earning a scowl from Martha. "What my husband means," Martha clarified, "is that Wyatt has a generous heart, but he doesn't often bring folks to the ranch." She patted Penelope's hand. "You must be special." Before Penelope could protest further, Wyatt entered, having seen to the horses and wagon. "Wheels worse than I thought," he announced. "Need to make a new one entirely. Take a day or two." Penelope's dismay must have shown on her face, for Wyatt quickly added, "You're welcome to stay as long as needed." I couldn't impose, it's no imposition, Wyatt insisted. The spare bedroom's just gathering dust, and Charlotte seems to have settled in just fine. He nodded toward the sleeping baby. Martha beamed. It's decided then. I'll show you to your room, dear. You must be dead on your feet. The spare bedroom was simple but comfortable, with a brass bed covered in a colorful quilt, a small dresser, and a rocking chair by the window. A pitcher and basin sat on a washstand, and fresh wildflowers brightened the windowsill. Wyatt's mother's room, Martha explained, her voice softening. He doesn't use it much since she passed, says it should be a woman's space. She helped Penelope settle Charlotte in the bed, surrounding her with pillows to prevent her from rolling. How long has Wyatt been alone here? Penelope asked, curiosity getting the better of her, going on 5 years now. His pa died when he was just a boy, and his ma held on until Wyatt turned 25. His sister married and moved to California. Martha straightened the quilt. He's built this place up from almost nothing, works harder than any man I know. After Martha left, Penelope sat in the rocking chair, watching Charlotte sleep. Through the open window came the soft sounds of the ranch settling for the night, horses nickering, cattle lowing in the distance, and the low murmur of men's voices as Wyatt and Joe shared a last smoke on the porch. Despite her fatigue, sleep eluded Penelope. This unexpected detour felt dangerous, not because of any threat from Wyatt, she instinctively trusted him, but because of the stirring in her heart when he looked at her. Thomas had been gone less than a year. Surely it was disloyal to notice another man's blue eyes or the gentle way he handled her daughter. Just before dawn, Charlotte's hungry cries roused Penelope from a fitful sleep. She quickly fed her, then, noticing the pink light beginning to filter through the window, decided to step outside for fresh air. The ranch was beautiful in the early morning light, dew sparkling on the grass and mist rising from the distant creek. Penelope inhaled deeply, savoring the scent of pine and earth. Morning comes early on a ranch, Wyatt's voice startled her. He stood by the corral, already dressed for the day's work. Charlotte woke me, Penelope explained, suddenly conscious of her borrowed nightgown and hastily pinned hair. Wyatt nodded. She seems happier today. She likes it here. It's peaceful. A moment of silence stretched between them, comfortable rather than awkward. Wyatt finally broke it. I was about to make coffee. Would you like some? Inside the main house, Wyatt moved with easy familiarity in the kitchen, stoking the fire in the cookstove and setting the coffee to boil. Penelope sat with Charlotte at the sturdy oak table, watching him work. You cook? She asked, surprised. Wyatt chuckled. Bachelor living, Mrs. Edwards. A man learns or starves. He set a cup of coffee before her. Martha usually brings breakfast over, but I can manage eggs if you're hungry. Penelope, please, and I can cook eggs. I'm not entirely helpless. Never thought you were. Wyatt's gaze held hers for a moment longer than necessary before he turned to fetch eggs from a basket on the counter. They worked together in companionable silence, Penelope frying eggs while Wyatt sliced bread. The domesticity of the scene struck Penelope suddenly, how natural it felt to be moving around this stranger's kitchen, preparing a meal together while her daughter watched from her basket on the table. You're good with her, Wyatt remarked, nodding toward Charlotte, who was contentedly gnawing on a wooden spoon. I'm learning as I go, Penelope admitted. Some days I feel completely lost. That's just life, Wyatt said with a shrug. Nobody gets a map. After breakfast, Wyatt excused himself to begin work on the wagon wheel. Penelope, feeling restless after days of travel and not wanting to impose on Martha further, asked if she could help around the house. Not necessary, Wyatt began, but Penelope cut him off. Please, I need to feel useful. Something in her tone must have resonated with him, for he nodded. Garden out back needs tending. Martha usually handles it, but her rheumatism's been acting up. The garden proved to be a thriving plot of vegetables and herbs, with a small apple orchard beyond. Penelope set Charlotte on a blanket in the shade and lost herself in the therapeutic task of weeding and harvesting. The physical labor felt good after so many days of sitting, and the earth beneath her fingers connected her to this place in a way that conversation couldn't. She was so absorbed in her work that she didn't notice Wyatt approaching until his shadow fell across the garden row. You've got a good touch with growing things. he observed, surveying the neat piles of weeds and harvested vegetables. Penelope sat back on her heels, wiping sweat from her brow. My mother taught me. She always said a garden feeds more than the body. Smart woman. Wyatt knelt to check on Charlotte, who was sleeping peacefully under the tree. Your ma still living? No, she and my father died in a fire when I was 17. Penelope resumed pulling weeds. That's when I married Thomas. He was kind and I had nowhere else to go. Wyatt absorbed this information silently. Was it a good marriage? He finally asked, then immediately backtracked. I'm sorry, that's not my business. It was. Comfortable, Penelope said after a moment. Thomas was a decent man. He wanted children, a home. She looked at Charlotte. He would have been a good father, and you, what did you want? The question caught Penelope off guard. No one had ever asked her that before. I wanted. She began, then stopped, realizing she didn't know how to answer. I'm not sure I ever thought about it. There were always more pressing concerns. Wyatt nodded as if he understood perfectly. Well, what do you want now? Security, a safe place for Charlotte. Penelope met his gaze. A chance to breathe, fair enough. Wyatt stood, offering his hand to help her up. His palm was warm and rough against hers, and the contact sent an unexpected flutter through her chest. Come see the wheel, it's coming along. In the barn, Wyatt showed her the partially constructed wagon wheel, explaining the process of selecting the right wood, shaping the felloes and spokes, and fitting the iron tire. His hands moved confidently as he demonstrated, and Penelope found herself watching his fingers rather than the wheel itself. You're very skilled, she said. Wyatt shrugged. Necessity teaches a man many things. Their eyes met, and for a moment Penelope felt as if time suspended. There was something in Wyatt's gaze, a question, perhaps, or an invitation that made her heart beat faster. Charlotte's awakening cry broke the moment. Penelope stepped back, suddenly aware of how close they had been standing. I should get her, she said, already turning away. Penelope. Wyatt's voice stopped her. I hope you know you're welcome here, for as long as you need. The days fell into a rhythm. Wyatt worked on the wagon wheel and his ranch duties, while Penelope helped Martha with household tasks and tended the garden. Charlotte thrived in the fresh air, her cheeks growing rounder, her smiles more frequent. Each night, Penelope would rock her to sleep in the bedroom that had belonged to Wyatt's mother, trying to ignore the growing sense that she was becoming attached to this place and the man who owned it. On the third evening, after Charlotte was asleep, Penelope found Wyatt sitting on the porch steps, smoking a cigarette and staring at the stars. May I join you? She asked. Wyatt stubbed out his cigarette immediately. Of course. She sat beside him, leaving a proper distance between them. The night was cool but not cold, the sky a vast canvas of stars. Beautiful, isn't it? Wyatt said softly. Yes. Penelope hugged her knees to her chest. I've never seen so many stars. One of the reasons I love it here makes a man feel small and significant all at once. They sat in comfortable silence for a while until Penelope gathered her courage to ask the question that had been on her mind. Why aren't you married, Wyatt? If he was surprised by her directness, he didn't show it. Came close once. Girl from town Elizabeth. We courted for a year. He paused. She wanted city life, fine dresses, social gatherings, things I couldn't give her. You couldn't compromise, not on that. This land, it's part of me. Couldn't imagine waking up anywhere else. He glanced at her. What about you? Will you stay in Silver Creek if you get the job at the boarding house? Penelope considered the question. I don't know. It seemed like the only option when I left my uncle's place. She twisted her wedding ring, a simple gold band that had belonged to Thomas's mother. I've never really had the luxury of choosing where to be. Everyone should have that choice, Wyatt said quietly. The weight of his words hung between them, laden with unspoken possibilities. Penelope felt a pull toward him that frightened and exhilarated her in equal measure. The wheel will be done tomorrow, Wyatt finally said, breaking the spell. If you still want to go to Silver Creek. If I still want to. Penelope repeated, hearing the subtle invitation in his words. Wyatt turned to face her fully. I'm not good with pretty speeches, Penelope. But these past days, having you and Charlotte here, he stopped, searching for words. The ranch feels different, better. We've only known each other a few days, Penelope whispered, even as her heart raced at his implication. Some things you just know. Wyatt's hand found hers in the darkness, his touch tentative, giving her every chance to pull away. I'm not asking for promises, just don't decide about Silver Creek until you're sure it's what you want. Penelope didn't withdraw her hand. Instead, she let her fingers intertwine with his, marveling at how right it felt. I need to think, she said honestly. Take all the time you need. That night, Penelope lay awake long after Charlotte had fallen asleep, her mind racing with possibilities she had never allowed herself to consider. Wyatt was offering her a real choice, and the freedom of that was as terrifying as it was exhilarating. By morning, she still hadn't decided. She fed and dressed Charlotte, then went to the kitchen to find Wyatt already gone. A note on the table explaining he'd ridden out with Joe to check on the herd but would be back by noon to finish the wheel. Martha arrived with fresh eggs and immediately noticed Penelope's distraction. "Something troubling you, dear?" she asked as they prepared breakfast together. Penelope hesitated, then decided to confide in the older woman. "Wyatt suggested I might stay here at the ranch." Martha's face lit up. "Did he now? Well, it's about time that man spoke up." "I've seen the way he looks at you. But it's so sudden," Penelope protested. "We barely know each other." Martha cracked eggs into a bowl with practiced ease. "My Joseph proposed after 2 weeks of knowing me, been married 37 years now." She glanced at Penelope. "Sometimes the heart knows quicker than the head. I have Charlotte to think about, and I've seen how Wyatt is with that child, like she hung the moon." Martha touched Penelope's arm gently. "Love isn't always convenient, dear. Sometimes it comes when you least expect it, and you have to decide whether to grab hold or let it pass by. How do I know it's real, that it's not just gratitude or loneliness? You don't, not for certain." Martha's eyes were kind but direct. "Life doesn't give guarantees. But I'll tell you this, I've known Wyatt Stone since he was knee-high to a grasshopper, and I've never seen him look at any woman the way he looks at you." Penelope spent the morning pondering Martha's words as she went about her tasks. After lunch, she put Charlotte down for her nap and walked out to the barn where Wyatt was finishing the wagon wheel. He looked up as she approached, his face lighting up in a way that made her heart skip. "Almost done," he said, gesturing to the wheel. "Good as new." Penelope watched him work for a moment, appreciating the confidence of his movements, the strength in his hands. "What would it mean?" she finally asked. "If we stayed?" Wyatt set down his tools, giving her his full attention. "Whatever you want it to mean, that's not an answer." A smile tugged at his lips. "No, I suppose it's not." He took a deep breath. "If you stayed, I'd hope it might lead to something permanent, a family." He gestured around. "This place has always felt half-finished to me, like it was waiting for someone." His eyes met hers. "Might be it was waiting for you and Charlotte." Penelope's throat tightened with emotion. "I don't want charity, Wyatt." "Good, because I'm not offering any." He stepped closer, not touching her but near enough that she could feel the warmth radiating from him. "I'm offering partnership. I think we could build something good here together." "I've only ever been someone's daughter or someone's wife," Penelope admitted. "I'm not sure I know how to be a partner." "We'd figure it out together." Wyatt's voice was gentle. "No rushing, no pressure. You can have the main house, Charlotte can have her room, and I'll stay in the bunkhouse until if things progress naturally." The respect in his offer touched Penelope deeply. Here was a man giving her genuine choice, genuine power in deciding her own fate. "I need to be sure," she said. "For Charlotte's sake, of course." Wyatt nodded, his expression serious. "Take all the time you need, the offer stands." A commotion outside interrupted their conversation. Wyatt frowned, moving toward the barn door with Penelope following. Joe was riding hard toward the house, another man slumped in front of him on the saddle. As they drew closer, Penelope could see blood soaking the stranger's shirt. "Wyatt," Joe called. "Found him on the north ridge, gunshot wound. Says outlaws are coming this way." Wyatt sprang into action. "Get him inside." "Penelope, fetch Martha and my medical kit from the cabinet by the stove." The wounded man, who introduced himself as Deputy Marshal Hank Williams, had been tracking a gang of outlaws who had robbed the bank in Silver Creek. He'd been ambushed, shot, and left for dead, but had heard enough to know the gang was heading toward the Circle S, likely looking for fresh horses. "How many?" Wyatt asked as Martha cleaned the deputy's wound. "4, maybe 5. Williams grimaced in pain. led by the Blackwell brothers. Mean sons of, he glanced at Penelope. Sorry, madam, how long do we have? Joe asked, already checking his rifle. Few hours at most. Lost my horse when they shot me, had to walk until Joe found me. Wyatt turned to Penelope, his expression grave. You and Charlotte need to hide. Martha will show you where. To Joe, he said, get the men from the south pasture. We're going to need everyone. Martha led Penelope to a hidden cellar beneath the pantry floor. Root cellar, she explained, lighting a lantern. Wyatt's grandfather built it, sturdy as they come. Penelope quickly gathered Charlotte and a few essentials, her heart pounding with fear not just for herself and her daughter, but for Wyatt. Before descending into the cellar, she sought out Wyatt, finding him loading rifles on the porch. Be careful, she said, Charlotte clutched to her chest. Wyatt paused, his eyes softening as they met hers. Always am. He hesitated, then leaned in to press a gentle kiss to her forehead. Stay hidden until one of us comes for you. Hours passed in the dim cellar, with only Martha's whispered stories to distract from the occasional sounds of men moving above. Then came the distant echo of gunshots, followed by an agonizing silence. Charlotte began to fuss, hungry and uncomfortable in the confined space. Penelope nursed her, whispering soothing words while straining to hear any movement above. Finally, heavy footsteps crossed the kitchen floor. Martha gripped her shotgun tighter as the pantry door creaked open. Martha, Penelope, Wyatt's voice called down. It's over, you can come out now. Relief flooded through Penelope as she climbed the ladder, Charlotte secure in her sling. The kitchen was a mess of hastily moved furniture and discarded weaponry, but Wyatt stood whole and unharmed in the center of it all. The outlaws, Penelope asked. 2 dead, 3 captured. Deputy Williams is in bad shape, but he'll live. Joe's riding to town for the doctor and to alert the sheriff. Wyatt ran a hand through his hair, exhaustion evident in every line of his body. Are you both all right? Penelope nodded, then impulsively stepped forward to wrap her free arm around him. Wyatt stiffened in surprise before relaxing into the embrace, his arms encircling both her and Charlotte with careful tenderness. Thank you, she whispered against his chest, for protecting us. Wyatt's hand came up to cradle the back of her head. Always, he promised, the word resonating through his chest and into her heart. That night, after the wounded had been tended and the dead properly covered, Penelope sat on the porch watching the stars emerge. The day's events had crystallized something within her, a certainty that had been building since the moment Wyatt Stone had found her stranded with a crying baby at dawn. She heard his footsteps behind her and knew, without turning, that a decision had been made. The wheel's finished, Wyatt said, settling beside her on the steps. Whenever you're ready to leave for Silver Creek. I don't want to go to Silver Creek, Penelope interrupted, turning to face him. If the offer still stands, I'd like to stay, here with you. The hope that dawned across Wyatt's features was like sunrise breaking over the mountains. You're sure? I'm sure that I want to find out where this leads. Penelope reached for his hand. I'm sure that when I think of a home for Charlotte, I picture this ranch. And I'm very sure that I've never felt for anyone what I'm beginning to feel for you. Wyatt's fingers tightened around hers. It won't always be easy, he warned. Ranch life is hard and I'm not a perfect man. I don't need perfect, Penelope said softly. I just need real. She glanced up at the stars, and a chance to choose my own path. That I can promise you. Wyatt's hand came up to cup her cheek, his touch reverent. May I kiss you, Penelope Edwards? Instead of answering, she leaned forward to press her lips to his. The kiss was gentle at first, a question and an answer all at once, before deepening into something that spoke of promise and possibility. When they finally drew apart, Wyatt rested his forehead against hers. Stay, he whispered. Build a life here with me. Yes, Penelope answered simply. And in that moment, beneath the vast Montana sky, she knew she had finally found her way home. In the weeks that followed, life at the Circle S settled into a new rhythm. True to his word, Wyatt moved into the bunkhouse, giving Penelope and Charlotte the main house while their relationship developed naturally. They took meals together, worked side by side during the day, and spent evenings on the porch talking about everything and nothing. Penelope wrote to the boarding house in Silver Creek, explaining that her plans had changed. She received a kind reply wishing her well, along with news that the Blackwell gang's capture had made Wyatt something of a local hero. As autumn approached, bringing crisp mornings and golden afternoons, Penelope found herself falling deeply in love with both the land and the man who worked it. Wyatt was everything Thomas had not been: passionate, expressive, and unafraid to show his growing attachment to both her and Charlotte. The baby, now nearly 6 months old, lit up whenever Wyatt entered a room, reaching for him with complete trust. On a particularly beautiful October evening, Wyatt took Penelope riding to a ridge overlooking the entire ranch. The valley below was painted in autumn colors, the Circle S buildings nestled like a promise at its heart. "This is my favorite spot on the whole ranch," Wyatt said as they dismounted. "I come here when I need to think, to remember why all the hard work matters." Penelope took in the breathtaking view. "It's beautiful. My father brought my mother here when he proposed," Wyatt continued, his voice taking on a different quality that made Penelope turn to look at him. He was holding a small wooden box. Said he wanted to show her everything that could be hers. Penelope's heart began to race as Wyatt stepped closer. "I know it hasn't been long," he said, "but some things you just know." He opened the box to reveal a delicate gold ring with a small sapphire. "This was my mother's. She made me promise to give it only to the woman who made the ranch feel like home again." His blue eyes held her steadily. "You're that woman, Penelope. You and Charlotte have brought life back to this place and to me." He knelt before her, the setting sun casting him in golden light. "I love you. I love Charlotte as if she were my own, and I want to build a life with you both if you'll have me. Penelope Edwards, will you marry me?" Tears sprang to Penelope's eyes as joy overwhelmed her. "Yes," she whispered, then louder. "Yes, Wyatt Stone, I will marry you." The ring fit perfectly, as if it had been made for her hand. When Wyatt rose to kiss her, Penelope felt as though everything in her life, every hardship, every loss, every difficult journey had been leading her to this moment, this man, this future. They were married 3 weeks later in the small church in Silver Creek, with Martha and Joe as witnesses and Charlotte, dressed in a gown Martha had sewn, cradled in Wyatt's arm during the ceremony. The townspeople, having heard the story of how they met, welcomed Penelope warmly and treated Wyatt with newfound respect. That night, as they returned to the ranch, their ranch now, Wyatt carried Penelope over the threshold of the main house, which the hands had decorated with wildflowers and ribbon. "Welcome home, Mrs. Stone," he whispered before claiming her lips in a kiss that promised a lifetime of love and partnership. Later, as they lay together in the master bedroom, no longer just Wyatt's mother's room, but their room, Penelope marveled at the journey that had brought her here. "When you found me that morning, with Charlotte crying and the wagon broken, I thought it was the worst day of my life," she admitted, tracing the line of Wyatt's jaw with her finger. "Now I know it was the best. Funny how life works that way," Wyatt agreed, pulling her closer. "One moment you're tracking strays, the next you're finding your heart." Outside, the Montana wind sang through the pines, a lullaby to the sleeping ranch. Inside, Penelope Stone no longer lost, no longer alone drifted to sleep in her husband's arms, secure in the knowledge that she had finally found where she belonged. Over the years that followed, the Circle S prospered under their joint care. The spring after their wedding brought not only new calves to the herd, but the news that Penelope was expecting. Their son, James Thomas Stone, was born on a snowy December night with Charlotte, now a chattering toddler, peering curiously at her new brother. 2 more children followed Sarah in 1881, and William in 1883, giving Charlotte the siblings Penelope had always wished she could have. Wyatt formally adopted Charlotte on her 5th birthday, though she had been calling him Pa since before James was born. The ranch expanded as Wyatt's careful management and Penelope's smart investments allowed them to buy adjacent land. They built a larger house when the original became too small for their growing family, but kept the old one for Martha and Joe when Joe's health began to fail. Through droughts and blizzards, good years and lean ones, their partnership remained strong. Wyatt never forgot to remind Penelope that she had choices, that her voice mattered in every decision. And Penelope, in turn, made sure Wyatt knew he was loved not just for his strength and protection, but for his gentleness, his integrity, and the way he treasured their family. On the 10th anniversary of the day they met, Wyatt surprised Penelope by taking her back to the spot where he'd proposed. 10 years, he marveled, his hair now touched with silver at the temples but his blue eyes as bright as ever. Best decade of my life. Mine too, Penelope agreed, leaning into his embrace as they surveyed the ranch below, now a thriving operation with additional buildings, more corrals and fields of hay stretching toward the horizon. Do you ever wonder what would have happened if I hadn't found you that day? Wyatt asked. If I'd taken a different route tracking those strays, Penelope considered the question. I think we would have found each other somehow, she said finally. Some things are just meant to be. Wyatt turned her in his arms to face him. At 42, he was still handsome, the years having added character rather than diminished his appeal. You know, that morning when I heard Charlotte crying and saw you standing there, so determined despite everything, I think I started falling in love with you right then. When you said you'll rest, I'll take the morning watch, that was the first time I felt safe after Thomas died. Penelope reached up to touch his cheek. You've been keeping watch over us ever since, and I always will. Wyatt kissed her with the same tenderness he'd shown that first time on the porch, a decade earlier. I love you, Penelope Stone, more today than yesterday and not as much as tomorrow. As the sun set over the Circle S ranch, painting the sky in the same colors that had greeted them on that fateful dawn, Penelope knew with absolute certainty that this was exactly where she was meant to be in this place, with this man, surrounded by the family they had built together. From a broken wagon wheel to a life overflowing with love, their journey had been unexpected but perfect in its own way. And as Wyatt took her hand to lead her home, Penelope sent a silent thanks to whatever fate or providence had brought a lonely cowboy to her aid on a Montana morning all those years ago, when her baby was crying at dawn, and he had promised to take the morning watch.